match, would that
Yes,
compensate?
the homeowners could call Terrion, could put a claim in with Terrion, and Terrion will first of all give the builder the opportunity to correct it, to move forward. If he will not, then Terrion will send someone out, a contractor out, to repair it, and it will come off. The builder will have to pay it that way, but he'll end up paying like 3 or 4 times the price.
Owner could go through Terrion then?
Yes.
Good. Okay, good. Thanks. Good to know. Thanks.
Any other questions, Councillor Brunton? There you are. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Brian. Question to you is, what kind of tolerances do they give you, like on your grading? And I know it can be difficult in places, but I mean, in general, what, like, there's still the 4 corners of the lot and the grade at the house and so forth?
Yeah, we have, so a normal plot, we'll have probably 10 points that they'll check, maybe more, maybe 12. And we have tolerances of, right now, before the new bylaw comes in effect, we have tolerances of 3 inches up or down.
Okay, so
3
that's been
inches up
around
or down.
for quite some time.
With the new bylaw, it's going to be 2 inches up and down. So they've restricted them even closer.
One of the concerns I have, and I did speak with an individual up, I'm not sure what the subdivision's called, and I don't know on the plot plan for the grade inspection if they put a garage floor elevation on there, because I know you get passed down from the developer, you're the one that's on the hook to do the grading, right? But my question to you is, some of the builders don't pave the whole driveway and they only pave the boulevard portion. So if they don't pave that right, sometimes it can't match with the garage floor elevation. Is the garage floor elevation on this new policy?
There is one point that is at the front of the house, right where the garage is.
Yeah.
Where they have a top of grade right there, which on the understanding I have, it meets the top of floor, right where the garage door opens.
Yeah.
Right at that point. Now, with a garage, if I may continue on, a garage should have a slope on it.
Right.
Maybe 3-inch slope, so the water would run down out of the garage,
Right.
down the driveway. There is a tolerance of, I may ask this through Lee, is that I believe there's a tolerance of 1.5 degrees on a driveway.
Again, Mr. Bunting, I'm going to interrupt you. We're getting into a highly technical matter that I think is outside of this topic. I'll maybe allow Ms. Robinson to comment later, but if you don't mind, I want to hold on.
All right,
before
well,
we
maybe
get
I'll
into
ask
those
my
details.
questions from Lee, but I dealt with grading plans for years, but my question really is, I noticed where a builder only paves the boulevard and not the entire driveway, where a problem has occurred, because the elevation of the floor in the garage and the curb at the street, if he only paves, say, 15 or 18 feet behind the curb, can be a problem, unless he does the whole driveway, because he has to know what the garage floor elevation is. So I'll ask Lee, I'll go over that. I've experienced that problem in the last couple of months. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions to the deputation? Mr. Bunting, I will ask Lee to comment relative to fees in a moment, but I do need someone to move that we receive your deputation. Councillor Geisens this time, thank you, has moved that we receive Mr. Bunting's deputation. Those in favor? I see no one opposed to that. Thank you. That's okay. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Bunting. You can take your seat.
Thank you.
Ms. Robinson, are you able to offer a comment relative to the fees? Have our fees changed under this new bylaw? And if so, how?
Through the chairman to council, I'm going to not answer that exact question, but give you the information that I believe is the fees are not changing. If we have to do a lot grading review, the fees will remain as approved as the 2017 rates. The difference is with this new bylaw, The majority of lots do not need a county review, so the fee will not need to be paid. There is the odd time that the county does need to be involved, and at that point, you would be charged the standard fee. But for the majority of the grading approvals, they will not be charged a fee because the review by the county is not required any longer.
And the review by the county will not be required because we will have a qualified person, i.e. either an engineer or an OLS, who will have looked at the lot grading for that lot and said, yes, it is in conformity with the master grading, correct?
That is correct.
Yep. Okay. I hope
So
that
if-
answers the deputation's question.
I
One other
just
comment?
wanted to, there's a lot of different parts of lot grading. One of the other parts is securities that is held through the subdivision agreement with respect to lot grading. And I'll defer to Mr. Baird with respect to that. But my understanding is that that will not change. The deposits required through the subdivision agreement for grading will still be required to ensure that the overall subdivision is graded in accordance with the overall grading plan for the subdivision.
Okay. Councillor Brunt.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess through you to Lee, and Lee, I apologize, I'm trying to speak into the mic here, but is the county or your department going to approve the overall grading plan from their engineer?
Through the chairman to council, there's not going to be a change in our current approval process for a subdivision. So as part of a subdivision agreement, they're required to do a master grading plan for the development, and they're required to comply with that. That obviously goes through the county for acceptance before they're permitted to construct anything. So this grading bylaw is speaking specifically to individual lot plans.
I realize that. My question to you was, do you, in your department, approve the overall grading plan for the subdivision?
Through the chairman, the county accepts the overall master grading plan for the subdivision.
You accept it?
Yes, the county, it's not just Public Works that accepts it, it's accepted by Norfolk County. There's other components, right? Like on a master grading plan, you'd have park grading, and you'd have
Right.
other things included on that. So it's not a Public Works acceptance of the master grading. The county of Norfolk County accepts the master grading
yes.
plan before they're permitted to start the construction.
So that overall, I'll call it the master grading plan, becomes part of the subdivision agreement, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so it's then a document that the county has said meets their approval.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, councillors. I think that will allow us then to deal with the staff report, and this is staff report PW 17-04, the revised lot grading bylaw report, and Ms. Robinson, can you lead us through that as needed?
Through the chairman to council. Before you is a revised lot grading bylaw. One of the things that staff have been reviewing is processes and ways to improve process and deliver better customer service. One of the things that we acknowledged was that we had professionals reviewing professionals' work when it wasn't necessary, and it was causing a bit of a bottleneck and a problem. We've worked with the development community. We've brought forward this draft bylaw. We intended to bring it before Christmas, and we were not satisfied that everybody was in concurrence that this would be a benefit. We went back and worked with the community again. Excuse me. And so what we've brought forward to you is one that I believe is supported by the development community, and we've received some positive feedback from the community with respect to the benefits that this will have in the promotion of the lot grading in Norfolk County, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for that question, starting off with Councillor Black.
Councillor Brunton asked a very good question, because I've had, I think both of us had complaints up in the Woodway Trails in regards to the difference in grading from the garage to the street, because it's split in two, where the county does their portion and then the owner does their portion. So you've got this split in the middle, and unless they do the grading at the apron from the garage, then you could have problems. It seems to be a bit of a chronic problem, this, private and county, and sometimes they do get together and sometimes they don't. Have you addressed that or reviewed that? Because I know Devin has been involved in this, and Jeff DeMulemeister and some other people, so.
Through the chairman to council, to be clear, in new subdivisions, the county does not do any of the driveway aprons. That is done by the developer or by the builder, depending on their contractual obligation. So the county is actually removed from that. What we are seeing is happening is that under our subdivision agreement, the developer is responsible for ensuring that the county road allowance, the driveway aprons within the county road allowance, are hard surfaced, i.e. asphalt typically. And the end result is that once the lots are being sold to the homeowners are opting to not pay their builders to do that and advising that they are going to contract out separately to have the remainder of their driveway paved. The end result is that the developer or the builder is paving their contractual obligation, which is to the property line for the municipal portion, and the homeowners are coming in later and doing that. So it's really, that's a contractual matter between either the builder and the homeowner, or the developer and the builder, or the developer and the homeowner, depending on how everybody has structured all of those things. It's not something that we can regulate through a bylaw in the municipality, nor is it under the county's control.
Okay, and I understand all that, but it seems to be these issues up at Woodways Trail seem to be an issue of timing, that all of a sudden the developer comes in and says, we're paving on Friday, Monday we're coming in and paving the apron. Would you like us to pave the rest of it and make a deal with you? So, I don't see a problem except for giving them more time. Like when they buy the house, if they can say to the developer, I'm going to pave my own driveway, or I want you at the time that you do the apron to pave the whole thing. So is that timing issue maybe been addressed at all?
Through the chairman to council, again, it's a contractual obligation between two parties that doesn't involve the county. And so, I can't speak, and we can't regulate what they put in their contracts. We can't require a developer to force all of the homeowners to pave their driveway. We can only regulate what's within our right-of-way. And so we can't, again, we're trying to enforce a private contract through our bylaws, and that's not possible. Like, we don't legally have the authority to regulate private contracts through our bylaw.
Well, at the very least, you can suggest to the developer that you give the private owner more time to make the decision, whether they're going to participate with the developer or do it on their own.
Through the chairman to Councillor Black, typically what happens is the homeowner chooses when they purchase it to not purchase the finished driveway. And so now the homeowner has moved in, the paving contractor has come in, and typically it's the paving contractor that knocks on the door and says, hey, I'm here, can I cut you a deal since I'm already here? So the homeowner has had plenty of time, because that is negotiated as part of the purchase of their home. So if they're already living in their home, they've negotiated that probably months in advance. It's simply the driveway contractors who say, hey, I'm here, can I give you a deal while I'm standing here?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brunton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just again, Lee, through the chairman to Lee. Lee, I'm just trying to look at the problem that occurred up there, and it's been long-standing. Like, some people want brick driveways, some people want concrete driveways, and there's never ever a happy median there. But my question is, and Mr. Bunting had kind of alluded to it, is there an elevation on the overall lot grading plan for the individual lot? Where's that elevation? At the garage floor elevation, or is it just in front of the garage floor? Where? Because that would solve a lot of problems for whoever does the driveway. And I'm just wondering, where's that elevation?
Through the chairman to council, a qualified person, when preparing a lot grading plan, would place, in order to determine what the grade of the driveway is, because they have to ensure that the grade of the driveway is within county specifications, would place a grade at the center of the garage, immediately adjacent to the concrete slab. So it would be effectively where the concrete slab of the garage meets the asphalt, that would be the elevation that's specified on the grading plan.
So then that,
So it's not the center of the garage floor, it's done on the
No,
outside edge of where the asphalt meets the concrete.
right, okay, I apologize for that, but my point is, if that grade is known by the home builder, and the grade at the curb is known by the home builder, it should not be a problem to establish a proper grade from point A to point B, correct?
Correct, that's what's shown on the lot grading plan.
Okay, so I guess what I'm getting at is the problems that occurred up there, to me, are, well, it's twofold, really. It is the homeowner didn't get his driveway done, and the guy that paved it didn't do it right. That's very obvious, so it's not our fault. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other speakers. Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Luke. I'll let you ask further questions if you wish of staff or comments. Yep,
Smart guy.
you're live.
Thank you very much. Send me the bill. Okay, I'm away. Lee, just on page 2 of the report, when you talk about the definition of the qualified person was expanded with respect to the OLS, and that is in the bylaw. That expansion, that's basically putting them back because they were always doing it, were they not?
Through the chairman to council, yeah, OLSs have always been permitted to do that in the past. What we chose to do with this was to define a qualified person, so that we could simply call them a qualified person, because in case things change in the future and different legislation changes, for example, one of the things that has recently changed is with respect to professional engineers. There's now something called a limited professional engineer's license, which allows somebody to have a highly specialized area of expertise in which they can get a professional engineer's license, but it wouldn't meet the technical definition under legislation for professional engineer, but in this particular case, they will become a qualified person. So the intention is, and the way this has been worded, nobody who's able to do it today, everybody who's able to undertake the lot grading today will be able to do so in the future as well.
Mr. Chair, in the last year, I've had a couple of meetings with an OLS. I'm concerned about this, and this is the reason I want to make sure that this should satisfy our OLS companies.
Through the chairman to the mayor, it certainly does. We spoke with several of them, and they were quite satisfied with the
Thank
changes in the wording.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Any further questions or comments relative to the report? If not, I'm looking for someone to deal with the recommendation. Councillor Black.
So move, Mr. Chairman, the recommendation in the report.
Thank you very much. I'm simply going to, it's short, so I'll read it, that staff report PW 17-04, the revised lot grading bylaw be received for information, and that council adopt the bylaw to regulate lot grading and drainage. Those in favor? I see no one opposed, so that is carried. Thank you very much for that. We have another deputation, but it's scheduled for 5, so we'll just, I think, move along, and we'll get into our staff reports, and I'm sure the clerk will remind me to come back to that other deputation and staff report, or both of them if they do arrive. Staff report, DCS 17-03, Long Point update. Mr. Baird, I think we'll call on you for that one. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir?
Yes, I feel that this report falls under the definition of improper conduct under our procedural bylaw. Okay, improper conduct shall mean conduct that obstructs in any way the deliberations and or proper actions of committee or council. To me, this is a clear-cut infraction and clearly undermines council's authority. Council provided firm and detailed directions to staff on which to base this report. This direction has clearly not been followed. What we have in this report is a motion for reconsideration through a staff report. If we're to debate this report now, I feel that we need a motion to reconsider. Much of the contents in this report are the same issues that we have already debated back in September for hours. Council did not pass a resolution to remove parking spaces. That original motion failed in its entirety, and somehow it's back on the table with a reduced number of parking spots to start with. I would remind council that the original motion was the removal of 163 parking spots. And now, in this report, it starts with 107. Where did the other 56 go? I don't remember council asking for those spots to be removed. Likewise to the 2-hour time limit. This is in direct contradiction of the direction provided by council to remove the 4-hour time limit and post it as overnight, which is clearly in the motion that we passed on that day. I don't feel that by debating this right now, we're just undermining our own authority because this report is not written as per our direction.
Thank you for that, Councillor. I'm not sure how to deal with your issue. I think I'm going to need to have someone put forward a motion and you would be the one, I guess, Councillor, if you feel as you do, that receiving and discussing this report is out of order. I personally don't agree with you. I think it is appropriate for us to deal with this report, and whether or not we accept its recommendations, committee will decide that. But I respect your position, and I think in order to be able to make a ruling on whether what you say is correct or not, I'm going to need something from you by way of a motion.
I would move the motion that staff be directed to go back and follow council's direction and come back with a report that adheres to that direction.
Okay, I think I'm going to deal with Councillor Height's motion in the context that he's suggesting this report is not something we can deal with because he feels it isn't implementing a previous direction. So that's what I'm asking council to now discuss, and I'll go to Councillor Black first.
Mr. Chairman, wouldn't it be appropriate, I thought it was up to the chairman to rule on a point of order. A point of order has been raised, and then the chairman rules on it and can seek advice from the clerk. So that's normally the way this proceeds rather than a motion. I don't understand why we're dealing with a motion. Could I ask through you for some clarity on this from the clerk?
All right, I'll allow that, Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this is a difficult issue. I would say when you refer something to staff or send something to staff and ask them to bring a report back, then staff can provide their professional opinion, even if that differs from what the initial direction was. So what you get into here is more of an issue where you're saying that this doesn't satisfy what council would do, in which case it would be appropriate to consider a motion to refer this matter back to staff rather than deal with it today.
But I think Councillor Black's specific question, Mr. Clerk, is whether or not I've erred by not ruling myself as chair on his point of order request. Should I have done it that way, or is it appropriate for me to ask for a motion, which then council as a whole will deal with?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would suggest that you have made a ruling on it, which is that the ruling is that Councillor Height should present a motion.
All right.
So that would be the ruling, and if you disagree with the motion and want council to vote upon whether a reconsideration is required, you could challenge the chair right now if you desire.
Yeah, I think thank you for that, Councillor Black, but given that I asked Councillor Height to put a motion on the floor to sort of formalize his position, he's done that, we've got it. In essence, his motion is saying he feels we cannot even deal with this report tonight, and so that's what you're going to be asked to vote on now in dealing with his motion.
Okay,
You want
so
to hear
then-
the motion again?
All right, no,
Okay.
thank you for that clarity.
You're welcome.
And I'm going to speak to the motion.
Okay,
Okay, so I'm not going to support the motion. We'll be voting against it.
thank you. Further comments on Councillor Height's motion? Councillor Brunton.
Yes, I just want some clarification also. So if we, I'm going to say ultimately vote down Councillor Height's motion,
Yes.
do we then deal with the report?
Yes.
And then what if we come to not accepting that report?
Then
Where-
that's fine. Then
where-
we can do
but
that.
What about the direction we did give, as Mr. Height indicated? Does that come back later?
Well, my interpretation on that one, Councillor, is if Councillor Height's motion fails, we are then allowed to deal with this report. If there are parts or all of this report that a majority of council is still not happy with, you will not approve it. There may be parts of the report that you find acceptable. There may be parts of the report, given the direction we gave to staff last fall, that you don't find acceptable. I'll be prepared to accept amendments. Parts of it could be removed, parts of it could be left in.
Well,
But if we reject the councillor's motion now, we will be allowed then to have a discussion about the report in front of you.
I guess my concern is I don't recall, without having a motion that we passed way back, is that available for us?
It is actually on your report,
Okay,
the first
all right.
page there, it does have the specifics that we dealt with back in
Okay.
September.
Thank you.
Further to the motion then. I will call the question. Those in favor of the motion? I see 4. Those opposed to the motion? I see 4, so that motion is lost on a tie vote. So that will allow us then to have some discussion. So I am going to go back to Mr. Baird. Thank you, Councillor Height, for bringing up your point. I respect that. Councillor Baird, you want to present this report to us, please? Mr. Baird.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Staff will put this report together. This has been prepared with Mr. Cridland, Ms. Robinson's input as well, because it involves all 3 departments. What we did is we took the motion that was placed forward by Councillor Height and seconded by Councillor Oliver, that's shown on page 25 of your agenda, in which there are a number of items, 6 items, that staff were directed to review and bring back before budget, which we have done here this evening. In respect to Councillor Height's comments here, we were to provide costs and commentary, and in some cases where there were potential problems or conflicts, we've looked at providing council with some options or perhaps recommendation for your consideration. So in each of the different resolution sections, we provided some commentary, and I'd refer you to the options page, which is page 28 of the agenda, page 4 of the report, and staff's recommendations that council consider looking at options 2, 3, and 4 as potential enhancements or refinements to what currently exists down at Long Point as it relates to parking, washrooms, and waste receptacles, to help mitigate some of the problems that have been in place for the last few years, and perhaps come to some sort of common ground to deal with some of the conflicts that have continued over the seasons from 2010 when they were first implemented. So with that, I have left with you this evening a larger color map that I wasn't able to include in the report just because of printing, but it makes it easier to make reference to in the discussion that will likely take place now. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions. I would certainly engage Community Services or Public Works if there's a specific question to them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baird. I'm going to go to Councillor Black first and then Councillor Height.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Baird. One of my biggest concerns, and well, not mine, but what I've heard from the people down there is the washrooms on the access points. And part of your option here, I believe, is it not, just I want to make sure, is to remove the washrooms, the existing washrooms from the beach access points and relocate them to the north nub of Winston, what is it, Winston Boulevard or Winston Parkway, is that it?
That is correct. The resolution, Mr. Chairman, that was approved was to provide a washroom change house trailer at 142 Erie Boulevard, similar to the one in Port Dover. And in our report, we reviewed that the costs were considerable, and there were some limitations in terms of physically being able to use a facility like that, because we do need hard connect water and wastewater discharge. So the suggestion that had been put forth was to create a sister cluster of washrooms that would match that is currently in place at the other side, the east side of the old Cottonwood Park, and be signed as such. So it does provide some sanitation facilities for non-residents or visitors that happen to be out on their walk.
Okay, so you're saying, yes, you're What I asked you is correct then? That it
That's
would
correct.
be the removal of the ones on the beach access and relocating them to the north nub of Winston Parkway.
One of the challenges, Mr. Chairman, at each of those washroom locations was the conflict with those immediate cottage owners with the noise and the odor and so on. And the suggestion here for council's consideration is to remove those from each of those beach access points and create a smaller cluster and provide some direction to that. So we still provide the facilities, albeit a little bit more defined.
Okay, and Mr. Chairman, I don't know how you want to deal with this, but I know it's like all these recommendations are going to be probably you want to deal with them maybe one at a time. I would be prepared to make a motion right now to accept that option. So in other words, it's starting to break out some of the options individually, and it's one that I feel is very important. We can separate that and discuss it.
Councillor, what I'm going to ask, and I'll certainly accept that as an approach when we're there, but could I ask you to just hold that in abeyance for the time being until we have some further discussion, and then I'll allow you to separate it at that point?
What do you want to do it that way for, Mr. Chairman? I mean, the whole idea of discussion is that you put a motion on the floor, and that's where you discuss and debate it. Once you have the motion, not before. So I would like you to receive my motion now.
Okay. Could you give me the wording for your motion then,
That,
Councillor?
well, it would be the one option that council approve the removal of the existing washrooms on the beach access points and relocate them as a cluster onto the north nub of Winston Parkway.
All right, that's pretty clear. Thank you very much for that. So, having accepted Councillor Black's approach on this, we're now dealing with the removal of the washroom clusters at each of the beach access, and his motion would only replace that with a single cluster of outhouse of privies at the north end of the Winston Parkway stub. Speaking to the motion, Councillor Brunton, and then Height.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Mr.
Yep. I'm going to go to Councillor Brunton first, then Geisens and Height. Thanks, Noel.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize, but I thought we had a report back sometime earlier that kind of dealt with a lot of this, and that's where I see the recommendations that are in that report, but I thought there was more discussion that took place with that. Didn't we have the gallery full and a report to deal with that at the time? Is that a...
We certainly did have a gallery full of interested individuals.
Well,
I
guess
think Councillor Height's motion that was passed back in September 13th,
did it
in
have
a sense,
report?
I think came forward as an attempt to resolve some of the issues, or at least take a position relative to the issues. So we had that. We provided that direction. I believe staff dealt with the direction and have now come back and said some of it's going to be extremely expensive or some of it isn't workable for other reasons.
Right.
Hence, we've got the report in front of us. So,
Well, I'll deal with the motion then,
Thank
if I
you.
may. But I have no problem with that, we'll call it a washroom cluster, but I do see a problem with people that want to, first of all, the beach at front of, all along this particular area, I'm looking at the map, is public beach, am I correct?
yes.
So if these people are way down here, and I'll talk about Buck Lane on the beach, and they need washroom facilities, how are they going to get there? Would they not need more washrooms? I can't see, I support I think you're talking of a trailer like they do in Fort Dover, but I don't think it's enough. I think it's because of the location of just one. I think we need more than that to suffice all the people on the beach on a busy day. And I'll leave it at that for now, but I do have one other simple question, if I might ask it. These people do not own the property to the water. My understanding, it's a public beach, and if that's the case, we cannot restrict the people from using the beach, correct? Is the ministry doing some work down there at present? Somebody said they are doing a lot of survey down there. Is that
Well, I think it's all of our understanding that that we've seen, I think through media, that M&R may be undertaking a property survey of their property boundary along that section of the beach. The beach is public, the cottage lots are private, we own the access points as
Okay.
Norfolk County.
Is it, and maybe I'm a little bit ahead here, but is it possible that the ministry may come back and say, here's what we want to do with the public beach? Can they have any say in that?
Well, the beach is theirs, Counselor. The beach itself,
The whole beach?
beyond the private cottages, is Crown land. It's-
No, I'm talking out front of the cottages.
When you say out in front, what do you mean?
Well,
On
based
the
this-
lakeside?
On this map here, there's all this beach area in front of these cottages, and that's public beach, but can the ministry make regulations on that beach?
I suspect they could. If the Crown owns it, the Crown could decide how it would be used or not used.
Okay, so, what we do here today may change, is that correct? Possible?
Yes. In fact,
you.
another point, and I'll just throw this out, I don't think it's news to anyone around the table, but we know there are issues with erosion of the beach.
Right.
I think we've been provided with from some photographs, at least for one section, showing some fairly severe erosion, which is occurring this winter due to high water, wind conditions, whatever, that are
Mr. Ch-
eroding the beach. So that is another concern.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll summarize speaking to the motion, and that is, I don't think one washroom at the location of, whatever that's called there, Parkway,
Winston,
Winston Parkway, is adequate to service that entire area.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Geisen's next, then Height.
I can't support this as well. We keep hearing about people doing things that they shouldn't be doing on the beach, and you're going to make them walk, I don't know how far, half a mile or a quarter of a mile or whatever to get to a washroom, and you think that's really going to solve a problem? There is one thing that the chairman just mentioned about it, number one, there may be a situation that when we're dealing with Hastings, oh sorry, not Hastings, but Woodstock, that if you look at Woodstock, right now I don't believe that there's much of a public beach. It's certainly eroding very quickly. What I suggest that we do, that we hold off on maybe all of this until sometime in April when we can go have a look and see what actually will happen. I don't think there will be a problem on Beach Ave, but there needs to be some additional washrooms. If there is a case that on Woodstock that there is no beach, we should be putting a barricade on each one of those access to the beach and make it clear that there is no public beach, and theoretically we would have to have a look at it in April. I don't know what's happening, but to me, I will not support this saying we're going to have one cluster. And I'm sorry, I really wanted to see some costs, and we didn't get the costs. And I'm sorry, I don't want to say this, but when council passes a motion, you would think that the intent of that motion would be part of that staff report. And I'm sorry, I'm really disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Height. Oh, do you want to comment, Mr. Baird? Before I go to
Mr.
Councillor
Chairman,
Height?
just so I'm clear too, just while we're on that topic, on page 27, the request as directed was to provide a washroom change house trailer at 142 Erie Boulevard, similar to the one in Port Dover. And in my report, we did cost that out. It's $165,000. And it was problematic because where it was proposed to go, there was insufficient water and wastewater disposal in place. So having a trailer like that in an unserviced area is not feasible. So from a staff perspective, we came up with another solution for council's consideration. I just want to make that clear that there was a cost.
Thank you, Mr.
calculated.
Baird. Councillor Geisen, do you wish to?
Well, I thank you for that, and I'm not arguing that point with you. But I know we were supposed to get as to what a trailer would cost, but we talked about garbage cans, we talked about a whole lot of other things, and yet there is no cost that I can see. I'm sorry, I would think that, like I said, a council motion would have that information, and I guess we'll deal with it one at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And with respect, even relative to the waste receptacles, if you look at the bottom of the third page of the report, it does talk about costs for those large capacity waste receptacles that I think was part of the intent of the original motion from September. So I think Mr. Baird, in the report, has addressed our specific items. He has come back and said in some cases it's either not feasible or would be very expensive to implement the items from our motion. Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And speaking directly to the motion, by removing the washrooms at the beach access, we're only going to increase the problems. We've heard from the cottagers, they're sick of people knocking on their doors, asking to use their washrooms. They're sick of people watching people urinating and defecating on the beach or on their properties by their trees. This council, has a duty of care. And that duty of care does not, the problem with that, okay, we do not need to be alliances in an indecent exposure lawsuit. Okay, by removing those washrooms, where will people change on the beach? Behind a towel? Or the party goers and the families? I can see how well that'll work when someone goes around the corner to use a washroom and out around the bend walks a 6-year-old child. Right? I'll have no part of removing those washrooms. People need a place to change. They need a place to go to the washroom, period.
Thank you. Speaking further to the motion, Councillor Black.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to it yet. I just
Okay.
moved it.
All right.
Okay.
Carry on.
Sorry about that, Mr. Chairman.
That's okay.
Yeah, of course, I'm going to support this, and just, for years and years, this was basically a subdivision, and the subdivision was developed so there was access points to accommodate the cottages that weren't right on the front of the beach. So the ones behind the second row, third row, it was developed for that. That was the purpose of those beach access. And tourism, and Norfolk County's gotten into tourism. We've invited people down here, and we should be encouraging, and we do have a sign that says, go to the provincial park, and that is where the facilities are. So they can park. There's not a problem with parking. There's not a problem with washrooms and change rooms and a beautiful beach and barbecue pits and tables. That's where they should be, and not in these access points. That's not what they're for. And have we asked MNR if they will allow us to filter people from our property onto theirs? Well, we haven't. So, we're saying, yeah, go ahead, everybody go on to MNR property. But it's just, to me, it is not appropriate. It's created for many, many years. We never had those washrooms there. We didn't have any problems. So now Norfolk County, has created this problem. Those people should be going down to the park and move those washrooms to that cluster. Thank you.
You're welcome. Speaking further to the motion, Councillor Sonnenberg, then Mayor Luke.
I have a question. What is the rationale behind 2-hour parking? What time does that give anybody to do anything? You're only allowed to park somewhere for 2 hours.
Councillor, may I ask, we're just dealing with Councillor Black's motion right now, which is only talking about the outhouses.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
And
I'll
we'll
wait.
certainly come back to you. I'm sorry, but it would be helpful if we can deal with that first. Yep, okay. Who did I miss? Councillor Breton? Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Luke first and then Councillor Breton. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and certainly speaking to this motion, Mr. Chair, there doesn't seem to be any easy solution down here. It's like we had a few complaints back prior to 2010 about people parking and involving sight lines and some problems there, but never, when we addressed that situation, did I envision what we have created here today. I agree with Councillor Black. We simply cannot expect this many people to be coming through these access points you know, I don't know, we're never gonna make everybody happy, I know that, but I do know that what is happening there now, and not during the week so much, if at all, but on the busy weekends, there's a lot of unhappy people there that for years and years and years and years were happy. And they're not now. And they're not because of the actions of previous council. So what is status quo is not, in my opinion, in the best interest of these people, these ratepayers, these cottage owners. And Councillor Black, you're quite right. There is a solution. It's just a half a mile down the road. It's all there. Everything is there at the park. This is M&R's beach. I don't know why the county feels that we have to pick up the tab to supply washrooms, garbage pickup, and deal with all these problems when it isn't even our beach to promote. I don't know. If people are going to travel for an hour to come to the beach and they don't have $14 for a carload of people to park for the day and have used the washrooms, change rooms, and all the things that Councillor Black has mentioned, then I guess maybe this isn't their destination, is it? That's my opinion. And I'm all for tourism and I'm all for promoting it. But at what cost, folks? Anybody around this table got a porta potty on the side of their laneway or in front of their house? Nowhere else in the county have we done this to anybody except here on Woodstock and Beach. Nowhere else would I even think of doing this. So why are we doing it to these folks? I think it's disgusting. Please do not put a portable washrooms in front of my residence or my cottage. Please don't do that. I find that very disrespectful. They got to be moved. I don't want to sit on my front porch and listen to those doors banging all day long. I mean, I have a right to be there and sitting on the porch of my cottage without listening to this. So why are we doing this to these people? What have they done to deserve this? So I don't have the answer, Mr. Chair, but I know one thing, the way it is, it's not working. The solution is there, just up the road. It's called the park. This is M&R's problem. This should not be our problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Brenton next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can't support, and I'm going to speak again, a motion to have one cluster of washrooms there. First of all, Councillor Geisens has raised a good point. Come April, there may not be much beach here to worry about for a certain distance, I guess, around Park. Is it Pike Lane? And I don't know the exact areas, but I know it is washing away. But I agree that the washrooms should be removed from those access points. Sorry, I couldn't get the word out. But I do think we need, if we're going to continue to park on Erie, that we need a few other clusters along that particular area if we go that route. But I have been there, I've talked to people, I've sat on their back porches, and I agree. You can't put the washrooms on the access points. It's not proper for those people. And again, Mayor Luke hit it on the head. The beach is really M&R's problem, is it not? So I cannot support one cluster, but maybe we'll get another motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Geisens.
Thank you, Chair. The problem here is this. Let's take it all away, and the people will still come. Why they don't want to go to the park, I can't honestly answer that. I would love to do as much as we can to make them to the park. What we run into is some people from Norfolk who want to take a 2 or a 3 hour or a 4 hour jaunt to Long Point, and they want to be able to use the beach. I can't see anything wrong with that. Now, can we find a better place to put the washrooms? Maybe I could understand that if we took out 1 or 2 parking spaces, and put some of those on Erie, on the, I guess it would be the north side of Erie, off of basically there somewhere. To me, that would solve part of the problem. How many we're going to have to do or what, I really don't know. But to simply say, let's take it all away, we are going to, if we go back to what it was, and I'm not sure whether it was 2008 or 2009, somewhere in there, when Woodstock was basically wall-to-wall, people, and the mayor just talked about it. They were parked where they shouldn't be parked. There was access trying to get into on Erie Boulevard, and the cars were around. You couldn't see, so we came up with a different solution. And I know we're not talking about the parking right now. We're talking about the toilets. To me, they have to be there. People don't want to go to the park, and like I said, we're going to create more problems by taking it away than by leaving them or doing something that works. And maybe we need to have another look at this, but I'm certainly not going to support that we get rid of them. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Baird, back to you for a moment. I read, as I'm sure the rest of council did, in your report, that relative to adding the washrooms and receptacles on the road access stubs north of Winston, Brant, and Pine, as the previous motion directed we would do, you've said because it's environmental and we would have to do more construction. What about Councillor Geisen's suggestion of perhaps taking 2 of the existing parking spaces at those other 2 hubs, stubs, and putting our privy locations there? So we would in fact have 3 clusters.
Yeah.
Is that a feasible alternative that could be investigated?
Mr. Chairman, a couple things to think about. On the mapping, it does show what looks to be stubs that go in, and they are shown on legal plans of survey. But in the real world, when you go by there, it's just road shoulder, ditch, and marsh.
But we have parking spaces along, parallel to the road in those locations.
That is correct. We do
Okay.
have parking there. So the other question is it safe and appropriate to put portable washrooms on the shoulder of a traveled roadway? And I think that's the question that I would defer to Ms. Robinson in that regard. You know, what happens at night in the dark, and you know, if they get damaged, let alone if someone's in it when that happens. It's just too close to the traveled roadway.
Okay. Further comments then relative to Councillor Black's motion? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to read it, if you don't mind, and then we'll know exactly what we're voting on.
That council approve option 3 respecting the removal of portable washrooms from access points and the installation of a cluster of new portable washrooms in the parking area north of Winston Parkway as outlined in report DCS 1703.
Okay. Councillor Wells. Yes, you can. Pardon?
What that motion means,
You can. My understanding of what it means, and I'll try first, and then the clerk may correct me, or the mover may correct me, is that the motion would remove all of the portable washrooms that are located at the access points presently, and there are some 7 of them, I believe, in total. And they would be replaced with 1 cluster of portable washrooms at the Winston Parkway stub only.
Mr. Chairman, and the existing location to the east of Old Cottonwood Park would also continue.
That one would contain, all right, thank you for
2
that
clusters.
clarification. So we would be removing all but 1 and replacing them with 1. Councillor Height, on my clarification, did I interpret it correctly from your perspective?
I believe so. I'd like the question divided, if possible, so that there's the washroom cluster on Erie Boulevard and the removal of
Okay.
the washrooms on the access
So
points to be
that's a
voted on
further
separately.
breakdown of Councillor Black's motion into 2 parts, I think you're asking for. Firstly, to remove the existing portable washrooms at the access points with 1 exception. Correct? 1 exception. That one will stay. Okay. And then secondly, to deal with the installation of a portable washroom cluster at the Winston Parkway stub. Councillor Height has asked to have those two parts dealt with separately. I can see no reason why we can't do that. So I'm gonna rule that we will deal with them separately. Mr. Clerk, the first part was,
That council approve the removal of portable washrooms from access points.
portable washroom clusters from the access points, with the one exception that Mr. Baird has reminded us about. Well, that we'll be dealing with that one in a moment, County Manager. Speaking now to the separated portion, Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I am a little bit confused, and by now most people should know that I get confused easily. So I look here and I see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clusters right at the present time.
Correct.
And we are going to replace those 5 clusters with a potential 1.
Correct.
One of the reasons that we have gotten into this is because there was not enough washrooms presently. So how is this in any way going to solve any of the problems?
Well, it may only if we can find either some additional locations to place new privies, or deem that the one that is proposed is acceptable. That's the only way it would solve the problem, Councillor, and it may not.
Well, I would be inclined to think it will not. That would be my guess.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions now to the separated motion? Councillor Sonnenberg, then Brunton.
This proposed cluster, how many, I'm going to use the word toilets, are going to be there?
Well, I'm going to just offer an opinion, and that's all this is. Given that we're proposing to remove 5, there isn't a men's and women's at each of the 5 locations. I would suggest we could probably replace those 5 with at least 2, if not 4, 2 men's, 2 women's perhaps, in this cluster that's being proposed. I don't know how many staff envision, Mr. Baird.
I think the cluster concept was men, women, barrier-free, and a hand wash station.
Yep, okay.
But there currently is only just one unisex.
At each one, that's correct. Does that answer your question then, Councillor? Each one now has one only, unisex, no
Yes.
barrier-free. It would be replaced, they would be replaced with one site with a men's and women's barrier-free plus a hand washing station.
Thank you.
Okay, we're still now hopefully going to deal with the motion to, at this point, we're only dealing with the removal of the existing privies at those 5 locations. Councillor Brunton.
Well, my question is, what about the other 3? Are there not 3 on the other back page? Are we not dealing with the back page where there's 3
Well,
more?
I think we are, Mr. Baird. Can you help us with that? Are there privies at each of those 3 locations? And you've suggested the one would stay
On the back.
adjacent to Old Cottonwood.
Sure, on the back page, Mr. Chairman, there is only one at, in the center. The other one, it just shows, those orange symbols simply mean beach access
Yes.
points, not necessarily washrooms,
Right.
but they are all washrooms on the other side.
So-
That whole stretch of beach is serviced through that existing cluster by the municipal lot on Abigail Becker, and one at, I'm not sure, I don't have the road name that stretches there at midpoint on Beach Avenue.
Yes, okay.
So we're talking 6?
Yes, I think we would be safely saying we're talking 6 with this motion.
Okay.
All right, seeing no further speakers, those in favor of this motion? I see 1, 2, 3. Those opposed to this motion? I see 4, so that motion is lost. Now we're going to, can I ask us to deal with the second part, which is to install a cluster of privies as per the recommendation from staff at the Winston Parkway stub. We've got to deal with it separately, so now speaking to that motion, Councillor Brunton.
I'd like to make an amendment to that motion that we need more washrooms on Erie Ave. And I think if we do it, give staff the chance to review it, we will will then be able to remove these other washrooms in the access points, but I'll leave it at that. So I'd like to make an amendment that staff be directed to find some other areas to install, I'll use the word